One. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, it's another live show right here on the Kev Baker Show on your #1 network. Yes, Truth Frequency Radio continues to be the home of some of the biggest shows in alternative radio. It really, really does. We've got Brooks Agnew here with Lucky, Quantum Connections, Ella Free. We've got Freaky Friday and the Woo Crew. We've also got our very own Chris and Cherie Geo with Beyond the Veil. Paranormal Portal, if it's into the woo that you like to go. And of course, I'm here with the Kev Baker Show. Monday through Thursdays, you can catch me here on tfrlive.com. We commonly simulcast now at the same time over on the YouTube channel for the Kev Baker Show. We're going out on iHeartRadio, TalkStreamLabs, TuneIn Radio apps, a number of terrestrial stations that I probably don't know about, and then some. So there's no excuses out there for you not to be able to keep up with all of your favorite shows right here on tfrlive.com, where we give you protection from deception. We're going to be shifting gears entirely tonight. Thankfully, most people will be saying, yes, we're not going to be getting into what's going on over in China, although we will be looking east. Not to current events, but to things from the ancient past. I want you to think about the ancient world. I want you to think about ancient high technology. Splatter in a little bit of ancient aliens. Tie all of that up with a neat bow in the middle that is called the occult. And we start to scratch the surface of some of the information that we're going to be getting into tonight. And before I bring on tonight's guest, and we get right into it, a few announcements to make. And that is that on the 10th of February, Monday the 10th of February, we've got a very interesting show lining up. We talk about the Matrix movies quite a lot on here. And I had Popeye on just the other night. And I remember a few years back, I had Popeye on the Kev Baker Show to do an actual full interview about the Matrix movies. So some time has passed since then, and there's talk of a Matrix 4. Not just talk, but it's coming our way sometime really soon. But what if I was to tell you I'm going to be joined by a screenwriter who claims that he was the person that wrote the Matrix story. Only Hollywood stole it off him. Yes, I'm going to be joined by Tom Althouse here on the Kev Baker Show, an author who claims that he is the man that wrote the Matrix story, and he's got a very compelling case to back it up. Well, he's going to be here on the Kev Baker Show on the 10th of February. And I am hoping that one day next week, we will be joined by Max Egan from Down Under in Australia. I'm trying to get a date put together. Max is going to be going to Anarchapulco very soon. So he's going to be speaking over in Mexico, along with my good friend Charlie Robinson and so many more household names from this alternative media slash truth movement. They'll all be there. I'm hoping we can get Max onto the show before he goes over to Mexico. So watch this space. But tonight's show, it's going to be equally as enthralling and fascinating as any of those future shows I've just mentioned, because just before Christmas time, towards the end of last year, myself and Scotty Lopez, we shared airtime with one of you. Yeah, one of our listeners. It was somebody that goes by the name of Black Templar in the YouTube chat room. Well, we've also got to know him as Max, but he's back here with me tonight. And the last time myself and Scotty had Max on the show, he left us with our jaws swinging, hitting the floor, because we were getting into Germanic and Nordic lore, mythology, and we were looking at some ancient Viking texts. And that would have been good woo enough, right? We like the ancient woo here. It's magical, it's mysterious, it's mind-blowing. But it went to a whole other level when Max started to break down what was potentially encoded in the Edda Scrolls. And what was in there was a story not of ancient times. No, it was of technology far more akin to the kind of things that we would call high-tech today. In fact, Max blew us away by breaking down how this was, in many ways, a story that within it was encoded the secrets of nuclear power, nuclear technology, and possibly the destructive force of a nuclear bomb. Warriors leaving Valhalla, all this, all that, and when Max broke it down and connected the numbers and looked at the math, I think we all shared an aha moment. Because there's lots for us to learn from the past that is very relevant in our present day. In fact, part of me feels it's nigh on essential, imperative that we look to the past to try and make sense of the world that we find ourselves today. And that's why I'm really excited, because tonight, ladies and gents, we are looking east. Yes, we are getting into some ancient Eastern mysteries with our good friend, Black Templar. He's here, he's live all the way from Germany. How you doing, brother? It's great to have you back.
Yeah, it's absolutely great to be on again, Kev. And of course, greetings go out to all the audience that has joined us this evening. And I'd say without a lot of further ado, I'd like to dive right in. Because today we'll have a look at the Eastern traditions. I mean, most of you are familiar with the stuff you usually get from mainstream media now and then. You know, all the ancient Indian or Japanese kind of like mysticism, fantasy stuff, the different monsters, entities, sometimes also what seems a bit like sci-fi high-tech, of course. But there's way more to it than just the entertainment side, as I'd like to show you tonight.
Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait to get into this, because, you know, even when I first started hearing about, you know, the ancient world when it came to the Eastern civilizations and cultures, I was blown away, because you know me, Max, I'm into my aliens, I'm into my technology, and there seemed to be in these Vedic texts and other literature that's been left behind, there seemed to be a story of just those types of things. Vermanas equals spaceships. We've got technology being spoken about. We've got these wars in the heavens. It sounds like something out of Armageddon or a Hollywood movie. Yet these are all stories about things that really, really happened. And this will build upon what we learned last time, because it might seem like we've geographically shifted a long way. I think as you're going to get into, and as often happens, things that seem unrelated on the surface, be it by time or geography, you know, when you start to drill down into it, there's a lot of commonalities there. And you start to find that stories from other parts of the world may be telling similar stories to other parts you've already looked at. That's why I'm really excited, because I've had a little sneak peek at what Max has put together here today. And Trust me, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to get your mind blown. You really, really are. So yeah, Max, I'm going to hand it over to you. I'm going to remain as quiet as possible until need be, when you need me to ask you something or to jump in. But
Bring something up, yeah, of course.
I really want to give you the time because you've put a lot of work into this, man.
Okay, so first of all, this today will also be a sort of very, very tight-packed and simplified introduction to some of the background knowledge we'll all need to put that stuff into the right place in our minds and understand it. So what you got to know about the Tibetan and the Asian Indian religious texts is they are largely written in Sanskrit. That's a really, really age-old language. It's impossible to translate it directly because Sanskrit often describes very abstract and complex concepts or processes with one or two words just. And it always depends largely on the context, how you would properly translate it. In some cases, we even don't have words in our Western languages to fully grasp what the Sanskrit meaning of a word actually was. So, for example, if you say Vimana, because you've brought that up, Kev. Vimana, usually, if you look at that word, it means V and mana. And if you translate it, it means high speed. But depending on context, it can also mean an aircraft, or in general, a vehicle that can go unhindered in all directions of space. So already that simple word Vimana, it already has quite a lot of different possible meanings. And to complicate things further, in some of the texts, when they actually speak about flying craft in these ancient texts, the Sanskrit words used are, for example, rata, which actually means chariot. So it's sometimes quite difficult to decide whether it's a normal chariot or if it's something more advanced. Always depends on context. And big problem, of course, is as I myself don't speak or read or write Sanskrit, all I can rely on is basically the translations you find for some of the old texts from Hindu mythology, and a lot of them were translated. Oh my gosh, back then in the end of the 1900s.
I mean,
not 1900. Sorry, back in the end of 1800s it was.
And you think about it as well, Max, because even back then, there was less language available to perhaps describe some of the high technology that was
especially the concepts behind what was described were not present in the minds of people, because imagine a scholar, let's say somewhere close to the end of the 18th century, say 1880 or 1890 or maybe early 20th century, and he reads a text and translates it, and it says something like God XYZ was rushing through the heavens in his Vimana. And of course, you look up, what might be Vimana? Vehicle. Okay, so people thought it must have been some imagined entity riding a normal horse-drawn chariot through heaven. Because that scholar will never have heard about anything like an UFO.
Yeah, exactly.
Or an aircraft or whatever. Or maybe also some stuff like black holes or the Big Bang and all that stuff. All those concepts, they weren't present.
Yeah, even back then, we were just starting to really throw around the ideas that led to quantum kind of mechanics and things. So even that then, I mean, I would imagine that would have been lost in translation, Max.
Yeah, sure. Either because they didn't know how to translate it in a better way, or in some cases, especially today, I sometimes have the impression that science tends to stick to those old translations just to keep that illusion up that this is all just some kind of bedtime story.
Yeah. Yep.
Because if you ask an Indian scholar and ask him about the Vimanas and that stuff, or are the events described in the Vedas in that giant collection of religious and mythological texts and legends and stuff from ancient India, are they historical fact or are they all made up? He will say, oh, of course they are in part made up, but there's a lot of historical fact inside, especially when it comes to all the technology and so on. And our Western scholars say, that's all hogwash. They just cling to that idea in order to exhibit some sort of patriotism or nationalism, because hey, look at our Hindu culture, what we already had long before any one of you ever had the idea of creating a plane. We already had the UFO stuff and so on.
Now, Max, can I ask you when
yeah.
when is the Sanskrit? When are these Vedic texts? When do they date back to? When are we told that was?
The established numbers are that the Vedas have an oral tradition that starts at least around 1,200 years before Christ.
Okay.
At least, when they were orally passed on. And the written form starts around 500 years AD.
Okay.
But in my eyes, these numbers are maybe not absolutely correct. I think that stuff was written down even way earlier.
Yeah.
Not just some 1,200 years before Christ, but if you ask me, the tradition goes back far further. Like maybe even around about 10,000, 12,000, even longer years.
Yeah, because we've got to appreciate that there's been multiple cycles, I think, going on here. So which cycle? That's the question. So yeah, it could be anywhere from the time you said going backwards to any date whatsoever.
So the word Veda in Sanskrit actually means wisdom, and within this large collection, as I already said, there's a lot of religious teachings in it, as well as philosophy, esoterics, all kind of stuff. But you also find accounts on events that are said to have taken place. Of course, they are described in a very mythical way. I mean, you could make Hollywood movies out of it, and this also has happened. I don't know how many of you are aware of the fact that Star Wars in large parts is based on stuff George Lucas must have come across in the Mahabharata.
Yeah. I had heard that.
The main heroes are the Pandavans, those 5 sons of King Pandu. Sounds a lot like the Padawan.
Very much.
Jedi trainees.
Yeah,
and
very
so on.
much. Yeah, very much.
Yeah,
indeed.
and it mainly deals with giant space battles and intergalactic diplomacy and so on. And up to a part, you find all that in the Mahabharata. And of course, the Mahabharata war that took place on Earth somewhere around over 3,000 years before Christ, if I'm not mistaken, because it denotes the start of the Kali Yuga. That infamous last age of a full 4 Yuga cycle we are all in, according to the Hindu teachings. And that may be over quite soon, as we'll see today.
Oh, I'm liking the look of this.
It's maybe, if the calculations are correct, that a certain Graham Hancock gives, it's about 5 years until the Kali Yuga will enter into around about 100-year intermission stage, between the Kali Yuga and a fresh start with a new Krita Yuga, a new Golden Age.
Ah, very interesting. We've been talking a lot. I mean, totally away from what you're saying
And
here,
I mean,
but
we will see later on that it all perfectly matches up with all the other math, so to say, because exactly at the times and dates where you have the end of a yuga, there always follows about 100 years, 200 years intermission until the next yuga starts. And those intermission is usually a time of enormous changes, sometimes even catastrophic changes. And you can line that up and match that up with our known history.
wow.
It works out. So maybe there's something more to it than we dare to imagine.
I think it's just another indicator that we are picking up on some time of change, you know? There is a big change coming. Call it the golden age, call it whatever. But yeah, I mean, obviously we can't claim that Hancock's interpretation of the numbers and everything else puts us exactly there, but it ties in with everything that we see in the world, Max. It sure does.
Mm-hmm. So a few notes, perhaps, before we really dive into all that stuff. The religions of Tibet and India, they are quite similar. As well, as far as the spiritual teachings goes, as well as the entities that are described and talked about and so on are concerned. What they both have in common, India and Tibet, you do have a complex science of energies, mind, matter, universal laws, and how they all interrelate. They both have that cyclic worldview, which basically means there's an eternal cycle of creation, development, and destruction for all of the universe without any discernible beginning or end. And from that comes also a concept of a multiverse, where you have basically an unrestricted number of possible parallel universes existing at the same point of space and time together. And these things you also usually do find in the ancient texts. I'll have some examples for you later on. So what do both Tibetan and Asian Indian lore say about our reality? Well, basically they say our material world is only Maya, which means illusion. And within their religious texts, they basically also give complex instructions on the use of energies of that true nature of our physical world, either to get enlightenment and deliverance from reincarnation, and in some cases, of course, also how you use them to get personal power and how to interact with the multiverse in general. And you've got basic distinctions, of course, in those spiritual directions. Don't know if I really understood it correctly, because it's really, really complex when you dive into that world of spirituality that they have, because it's so vast and in many, many ways so alien to our Western understanding of things. But there's usually a righteous way, which means in harmony with universal law, and that's dharmic, coming from dharma, which means in Sanskrit about as much like law, justice, but also wheel and circle.
Yeah.
So, or also planet, circle of life, experience through, so to speak, suffering, the material existence, and so on. What they also have in common, they also know of avatars. An avatar is basically a divine or universal energy or intelligence manifested in material form, usually in the ancient texts as a form of superhuman being. For example, Krishna, which is himself worshipped in India as a god, is, if you look at it closely, an avatar, an incarnation of one of the highest Hindu gods called Vishnu. For example, it is said that in every yuga you will have an incarnation of Vishnu. So during the Mahabharata era, it's Krishna. who the incarnation for Krishna in our times is or was or will be, I don't know.
And
People
again,
have,
just looking at that though,
it's,
that name's very close to Christ.
yeah,
Just
Krishna
looking at it.
also has in many ways a big similarity to Christ, because he's also a spiritual teacher. He also performs a series of miraculous deeds, but quite in contrast to Jesus Christ, Krishna is also a warlord.
Ah, and of course that wasn't meant to trigger anyone, and we're coming up on the break, Max. Already,
okay.
We're coming up on the breaks. I don't want you to get cut off with the break coming up. We're talking to Max in Germany today. We know him as Black Templar in the YouTube chat room. This is the level of like deep researched woo / ancient knowledge / occulted knowledge that Max brings to the table. And I remember when we first started speaking with Max, he thought he could put all of this together by, say, Christmas time, New Year. And he's still going down the rabbit hole. We'll be right back. Yes, apologies for the loud music there, Max, and everyone on YouTube. But like I was saying, you know, Max had hoped to put all of this together. You know, he was seeing the connections. And I remember you saying, Max, we'll have all this put together, you know, by Christmas, New Year time at the latest.
And then it started. And then it started to pour in.
You're now
was like
finding
information started finding me that I have, in some cases, not even thought about. In some cases, looked for since years.
Yeah, you're starting to find what most people find. You would think when you dive down a rabbit hole, you eventually come to the bottom. And you come to a stop and you get your eureka moment and you learn from the rabbit hole. But like we now often find, the rabbit hole doesn't in fact ever end.
And in fact, branches off and keeps on branching off. It's unbelievable.
It's like a roller coaster ride, dude.
And the other big problem, especially with all the
now remember,
stuff.
Yeah, we're live. We're live on air. Just in case you think you're telling me something off air. We're still live. Okay.
I know we are live.
Okay, that's cool. I was just making sure.
Just so people understand why it took so long until I managed to come back with some more woo. Getting into all that Eastern stuff has its fault strings and tripwires, because a lot of the texts, no matter how you search for them, there is no German or English translation available. In some cases, maybe if though there is one, you only get it behind a paywall, or you'd have to lend it directly from some specialized library and so on. So that's not a route I can go down, because basically it's also just a hobby for me.
Yeah, and I want people to think about that. Max,
if I was researching like for a university or so, and you know, you get all the connections and that stuff, and you're supposed to do a really scientific work, of course you go to other lengths. But nevertheless, I try to get into all those texts I can get.
Yeah, we live in a time of great surveillance, and I want people to think of these ancient texts. Max is in Germany. There's a pretty significant piece of history round about the middle of the 19th century.
Yeah, okay.
And that can trip things when you look for this information, I imagine, Max.
Yeah, that's mainly a problem if you try perhaps looking for some of the books that were declared a big no-no after those 15 catastrophical years.
Yes, exactly.
What's another big problem is just the sheer amount of information. Just the Mahabharata itself, that epic. Depending on the translation you get, it's about 5,000 to 6,000 pages.
Wow! And then the multiple translations.
And then you start multiple translations. Some leave stuff out. Some describe the same some translate the same lines a different way with more detail, less detail, and so on. That's the problem with Sanskrit, because you've got so many probable ways of translating.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll find one line that says it was an aerial craft. The next line says no, it was a chariot. The next translation, and so on. Or for example,
it's like an
another thing.
ancient. It's like an ancient jigsaw, knowing which
Yeah,
translations go together. But we're getting ready.
You basically got to compare the texts. You got to compare the translations. Which ones are the ones you?
We're going back to the network, Max. So stand by. Here we go. I'm going to reconnect us now. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Are you getting your ancient woo on tonight or what? I have got the Black Templar, aka Max, all the way from continental Europe. Yes, and he's speaking to us live. He's taking us back in time. He's taking us to the ancient world of the Vedic texts. You know, I've spoke about the Vermanas many a time on here as I fantasize and romanticize about the world that may lie out there of spaceships and other civilizations and beyond. And here we are, a civilization way back in the past. Oh, they were so ahead of me. They were talking about the wars in the heavens. And Max is trying to put all of this together and show how it connects very, very, very much in a very relevant way to everything that's going on today. And I imagine that this is going to be one of a multiple series of shows, because this topic tonight, we're getting into the Vedic text, the Hindu, the Tibetan, stuff like that. You know, we'll barely scratch the surface. And I've seen what Max has been putting together on the back end, series of PDFs, the information, and even that, it's only like bullet points to remind them where to go. So I really hope the audience appreciate and the time that Max has taken to put this together. And on behalf of the audience, Max, I thank you for coming on here and sharing this with us.
Yeah, I got to thank you, Kev, because I wouldn't know of a better place to break all those news.
Thank you, brother.
I know that you're an absolutely astounding guy. I know we've got one of the best audiences around, because each time you are in the chat or you're on the Discord server, it's just like one large family.
Yeah.
You won't see people starting to bully each other over opinions and so on. It's just the way it should be.
Exactly, brother. So we're here. We got to the break, unfortunately, but I'm going to hand it back to you now, because you were telling us during the break, the Mahabharata. Yes, I got it right.
Yeah, it was just to give you an example, why it sometimes takes so long to glean any information from those texts. Because it's enormous, it's great. That epic alone, 5,000 to 6,000 pages, differing translations. And another big problem is you can't rely on secondary literature. I mean, how many people have written books about the ancient aliens and about the ancient UFOs and so on? And then you start to search for the original passages in the texts that they claim to cite and quote. And you can't find them, and you can't find them, and you can't find them. Because, I mean, everyone, for example, is, I guess, familiar with that iconic few lines that are said to be from the Mahabharata about the first use of a nuclear weapon ever. With that giant pillar of fire rising up, and it burns everything down, and afterwards the water is poisonous, and all animals die, and people die, lose their hair, lose their teeth, and so on. And you can't find that exact passage. And it turns out, I guess it took me 1 or 2 days researching the web and also the Mahabharata itself, until I came across a site that explained it finally. All those people writing books using these lines, it all started with one author. That one author still used the correct quotations. He had the correct lines from the Mahabharata, and he also hadn't merged them together, because that whole story that reads so nicely like what we today know about a nuclear explosion, that's actually a handful of lines put together from various chapters of the Mahabharata that are not directly related.
Oh,
so it's a makeup.
Now that would be like me going to Before It's News, Above Top Secret, and a number of other sites, taking all of the real snazzy stuff about, say, the corona flu, putting it together in one kind of stanza and saying, look at this, look at all this information. But in reality, it's a hodgepodge. It's been put together. It's totally out of context.
And ever since that one book came out in the, when was it, 1960s, 70s or so, it was a French author, I just can't recall his name at the moment. Ever since, they just simply copied from each other without ever checking back with the original text.
Wow.
But on the other hand, in the Mahabharata, if you're looking for those lines that was made up of, you will get the real woo.
Oh.
You will get those descriptions. Maybe not that in that neat and easy to understand way.
But Max, this is why you're perfect for this show, right? Because we're after the truth. And this is a perfect example of it again. You know, we're all used to that. And I'm as guilty as anyone. I often believed there was a story of a nuclear war in there. But, you know, now you're giving us the truth. That wasn't exactly right. But here we go. The truth, it blossoms into something potentially even better. So talk to us, man. What did it really mean?
Sorry, just didn't get you.
No, it's okay. I mean, tell us what the actual lines mean then.
Wait a second.
There we go. He's trying to dig up. He's got so much info. This is my fault. You see, I knocked Max off his line there.
I just have to look for passage in the text.
There he goes. You see, diligent researcher, making sure he gets it right for us, and I find that quite amusing. Nothing against the authors of the books in question, but the fact that they all went back and kept regurgitating that same story. And nobody bothered to go and check the original source. Oh, dear. That sounds a bit similar to the times we live in today, Max. Is Max still with us?
Yeah, I'm still there.
Did you find the bit you're looking for?
I guess we'll have to postpone that, perhaps.
Don't worry about that, but you can move on then. We can get back to that.
Definitely, I'll have anyway planned to do one show if you let me do that.
Oh, of course.
Where I just get into those high-tech weapons which are called astras in the Vedas, those celestial weapons given to the gods, to man, or in some cases also used by the gods themselves. And then I'll have the text passages directly from the Vedas all sorted out and ready.
That's cool. That's cool.
Then I can read it. I can read them to you.
That's cool. So just, before we move on from this part then, for people, they might think, but we'll get back to that. But just to kind of, to wrap up, you're talking about, it wasn't a nuclear war, but there was celestial weapons talked about.
It might have been nuclear, because the description sounds a lot like it.
Yeah.
But not in that way they made it up for their ancient UFO novels and stuff. So we were actually going on to get introduced to the religions of Tibet and India, and what is very important, and please keep that in mind when we're talking about all that stuff, their concept of nothing. If we Westerners say the word nothing, we actually mean a total vacuum, usually.
Yeah.
But in the Hindu philosophy and religion and occultism, as well as in other Asian cultures, nothing means literally no material thing, or a thing that is not perceivable by the senses. So it's not a complete void, but more or less implies that something is in a state that is not material. So basically it's possibly still present as an energy, for example. So when they talk about nothing, it does not mean that vacuum. That's also one of those misconceptions we Westerners have about those Eastern traditions. Oh yeah, they're all about this complete emptiness. of mind and so on. No. They are talking about
They're talking about
becoming aware and
it's almost
realizing the no things, the energies.
It's almost it's not nothing. It's pure potential.
Yeah, so to speak.
Yeah,
you nailed it.
Yeah.
So Tibetan religion itself has a very old tradition. The first Tibetan religions were the Bon cults. They are basically shamanistic and animistic religious systems. And later on came the widely known Tibetan Buddhism, which is still influenced by those old pagan Bon traditions. And of course, until today, in Tibet, you also have different schools of Tantra, which are in many cases direct successors of those pagan traditions, but also with Buddhism mixed in and so on. And those Bon traditions, they heavily feature spiritual interdimensional entities, often shown in a way we in our Western culture would imagine, for example, a demon.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's important for the audience to really appreciate as well. I talk about the multiverse, many worlds, things like that, but this was something that was really core to the Tibetan kind of religion, wasn't it, Max? Because they truly had an open mind that it was a multiverse to them that we lived in, right?
Yeah, definitely. And if you go by the cyclic development of the world, within the time we live now, that Kali Yuga, that's the age where mankind has lost its connection to all those energetic things. So basically, the vibrations, the frequencies of our universe, of Earth, and so on, everything in it, are not fit to allow these entities to be seen or to exist in our material world as they perhaps did in some other yugas long ago.
Yeah.
So
that's quite interesting, though, dude. Because I mean, talk about these yugas and the potential that we ourselves are upon the end of one cycle, starting a new one. And we talk about the paranormal, or I talk about the paranormal becoming normal because there's so much woo. So it's almost like
because the moment when the Kali Yuga ends, it's the last of the 4 ages that comprises one cycle. So the next age that will come after those years of intermission will again be one of those golden ages where basically everything's perfect and where those energies and all that stuff will be present again.
Yeah.
This doesn't mean that demons will roam about in your lawn, or you will have to fear that poltergeists will start to move in with you in your home or whatever. No, it just means that we will again begin to become aware of these things and also interact with them, perhaps on some level, because it is said that in that golden age, man had no shortcomings, and man also had no needs. There was no problem to get food, there was no problem to get shelter, and so on, because people created all just by force of will.
Yep. This is starting
basically out of thin air, just turning thought form into materia.
You know, there's a lot of people talk about Tartaria and things like that, but there's a thing in Tartarian buildings where there is no toilets. Which sounds a bit weird, right? What the heck's that all about? But then if you have a human form that doesn't eat food the way that we do and doesn't get rid of food that's been consumed the way we do, then I'm not saying this proves anything, but I think I know what Max is saying here, and it does make sense to me. You know, we go back to that golden age, our purest sense of energy, near enough, and over the cycles we eventually come back down to where we are now. Max, is that right?
Yeah, sure. Then it starts anew.
Yeah. Wow,
so,
dude.
What we also got, most people won't know about in Hindu religion. There's a lot of different currents, cults, teachings. just depending on which parts of the Vedas you want to pick out, or which guru or sage you want to follow, and so on. And that's still an ongoing process of development, because old gods go, new gods come. That's all in fluctuation over in India all the time. And what's also interesting is that complete esoteric or philosophical or religious school, or whatever you want to call it, it has different disciplines. They know yoga. That's basically what we all know, those bodily exercises that are aimed at getting the energy flow in the body working correctly. Alongside with it also goes, so to say, a yoga of the mind, certain meditation techniques, and so on. Then we have tantras. Tantra could perhaps be best explained to with what we know in our Western civilization as perhaps occult covens, lodges, or whatsoever. It's basically like if you'd said today in our Western world, yeah, I'm a Rosicrucian, or I'm agnostic, or whatsoever. I follow this and that occult school.
Yeah.
That's like basically that's Tantra.
I think the most famous tantric, if you can call it that, would be Sting. Sting's very openly, talks about that kind of tantra, the tantric sex and tantric way of living.
Don't just reduce it to that variant of exotic sex. That's just in some tantras an instrument to reach certain states of mind.
Yeah, because I mean the act of sex is very prevalent, very at the forefront of some magic, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, of course. There's also, it's basically the source of what became known with Crowley in the West, all that sex magic.
Yeah.
Tantra's in some parts quite at the core of it.
Now, is this why some people, Max, and I don't prescribe to this way of thinking, I don't hold anything against anyone who does, but there's a large swathe of people who think that yoga in some way is demonic. Now, again, I'm not having a go at anyone that thinks that way.
Why would you? I can imagine why some people call yoga demonic. Because if you are successful at opening your body and your mind to those energies around us, to those, so to say, states of mind or states of altered perception, that's usually quite close to what many religions see as possession.
Okay.
My God, you might see things that are not here in a material form, but they interact with you. They speak to you. Perhaps you see them. You see perhaps energies. You feel energies whatsoever. You may develop, in some cases, even some kind of ESP, like telepathy or.
Now, Max, can I just thank you, because that's the best explanation I've had why some people may have fears.
There's another thing that comes from Gnosticism. I don't know if you're familiar with the Nag Hammadi. That ancient text that was found together with all that other Dead Sea Scrolls somewhere around 1945 in the desert in the Middle East. And that Nag Hammadi talks about a quite different version of creation than the Christian one. In that Nag Hammadi, there's a group of, so to say, divine rulers called the Archons. And these Archons together start, so to speak, kind of like a faction war, because part of them says, let's create a being that is like us, that has a mind and that functions like our mind, so we can control it. Of course, there's an opposing force that says, nope, you don't do that. Leave man alone. Don't interfere. And some people say, if you're now doing any kind of yoga exercise or anything to open your mind to those higher planes of perception, you are inviting in control from those archons. Good. And they will start to possess you, and they will lead you into doing a lot of negative things to yourself, to others, and so on.
Dude, again, I want to thank you, because this is the best explanation I've heard as to why people would be you know, kind of against yoga. And again, thank you, because I've learned now why, and
It's just
now I can
the same
appreciate
with.
it. Now I see where people are coming from. It gives me a different viewpoint.
I think that's the fear that many people have. It's the same with those rumors about Reiki being dangerous. Reiki is a form of energetic exercise and energetic healing that also comes from the Eastern tradition, and it's also very often decried as being in its core satanic and negative and black and God knows what else.
You see, this is how over time things can pick up negative connotations.
Yeah, and of course, I mean, the moment you start perhaps to make experiences that don't line up with what officially is told by, for example, the Christian Church or the Quran, whatever bigger religion you want to take, then in that moment you become a problem to them.
Yeah.
Because you are a living proof that questions their view of things. So you gotta demonize anything that doesn't fit your variant of reality.
It doesn't fit with your belief system.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, exactly. So
I mean, look at the Agoris over in India. If I told you about the Agoris, you would just simply I mean, don't know if that's too much woo.
Oh, please give us too much woo. We've got
okay. The Agoris.
Yeah.
The Agoris are a cult over in India. Absolutely legal. They usually don't harm anybody. All they do, they usually just do to themselves. And they say if you want to experience enlightenment, you have to embrace being in all its forms. So there can't be anything in life and in the universe that you don't embrace. And to reach that state of mind, usually an Agori decides to learn to embrace, for example, the thing he hates or fears the most. And this in many cases takes the form of what we Westerners would call necromancy or even necrophilia and cannibalism.
Whoa.
Because those Agoris work a lot with the energies of the dead. Because according to Hindu science or Hindu religion, when a body dies, it's not completely dead yet. It has just stopped functioning. Because the tissue is still intact, it could work anytime, but somehow the operator has left the vessel, the pilot, so to say. The mind is no longer there, the soul is no longer there, but the energies reside. That's also why they burn the bodies, to release all energy, because as long as there's a drop of water in your body present, there's gonna be information inside your body, there's gonna be energy in your body, and you can only basically disconnect and pass on to the next realm and reincarnate or whatever comes next if you no longer have connection to your body. And those Agoris, they try to also embrace their own mortality, as it seems, by the rites. And for example, one very infamous rite is the Shavasatana. And that includes performing a special meditation and don't know what else, sitting naked on a dead corpse.
Whoa.
For example, they will also in some occasions eat the flesh of the deceased. For example.
Oh, and people are flipping out over bat soup. Wait till they find out this. But this ties in with Shiva as well.
Yeah, they do worship Shiva a lot.
Yeah, because I was just reading there, and they say don't make get them confused with Shiv Netras, who are ardent devotees of Shiva.
If anybody's interested in the Agoris, now that I've spoken of it, I mean, I also don't have too much in-depth knowledge. Just although those two stands that I've come across. There's a series of books written by Swoboda. They are called Agori Part 1, 2, and 3, I think. And they are in form of a novel, and they describe the Agoris and the cult. And it's quite popular also in India, that book. So if you want to know more about the Agori, perhaps have a look at those novels written by Swoboda.
This looks kind of close to like voodoo type stuff.
Yeah, you can also find videos on YouTube where you'll see them eat dead bodies. At least in part.
Whoa! And I obviously don't recommend that for anyone. But if you do,
I
if you
guess
want to
the
prove it,
algorithm
yeah.
would freak out if we showed that on the KBS show.
Yeah, I don't think my
Yeah.
handlers would be too impressed with that. But you know, we're almost on the break again, and it's funny
Yeah,
because
sure.
Shiva has come up here in the conversation with these Agoris. And of course, Shiva is somewhere that I do hold very close to my heart, or a deity. Not because I worship Shiva, but because of the time I spent researching and looking into CERN. And of course, here's one of the most advanced scientific facilities on the face of the earth. And sitting in the middle of its grounds, you know, the most prestigious statue there is one of Shiva, both the destroyer and creator of worlds.
There's a reason for that.
Now, when we come back after the break, I'll get you to give your reason for that, because the audience are going to love that. It ties in with CERN. And you see, folks, how the ancient world isn't as separated from where we are today. And Max is going to complete these connections and draw these connections and draw these subjects all closer together when we come back for hour number 2 of today's Kev Baker Show. Now, don't forget, coming up right after this, it'll be the Freedom Link with Joe Joseph. I'll be back tomorrow with Joe Joseph, Scotty Lopez, and we'll be doing Freaky Friday right here on TFRlive.com, your #1 network. We'll be right back. We're on the break again, folks. Yes, I can't sing, we know that. But dang, Max is he's already blowing my mind, and I know that he hasn't even tickled about a third of what he's got to present today. But we can come back and do a series of shows on this, because I think it deserves, you know, a bit of time spent on each of the subjects, because I wouldn't want to brush over anything, just kind of skirt around the edges of anything, Max, because you've spent a lot of time researching this.
Give me just 1 second, and when we're back from the break,
yep,
I can show you why Shiva is dancing in front of the CERN, in my opinion.
Oh, nice. Myself and Anthony Patch, we spent...
I just gotta get the
Did you
images.
send me something?
Yeah, one moment.
Yeah, no problem.
Because I think it's I don't know if it would be a problem to show the video, cause Mr. Mohan, yeah, okay, it's no TV station water sign, but he's got his name as a translucent water sign in the picture, so I don't know if we can play the video.
If you just send me it and I'll have a look.
Wait a second, I'll give you the link.
Yep, you send on Skype, I'll get it in here. But folks, I want to thank you all for tuning in today. I see Tessa in there. We've got Pascal from Switzerland. Welcome, Pascal. ZX81. We've got Mike Ray in there again. We've got Lorna. Good to see you. Quick. Jay-Z. What else have we got? Vanya. Okay, now Max has sent me a clip here. Give me 2 seconds, folks. I just want to have a little look-see at this on the back end.
Advanced.
No, I'll turn this down. Yeah, that watermark worries me. I'll show the still image right now, if you want me to show it, or I'll show it when we come back after the break. Okay.
Wait a second. I guess I'll have a workaround.
Okay.
Because, okay, we can't maybe see the full.
Yeah, and he's got ads on that channel and things. It looks pretty polished. Nearly 1 million subs. Ooh.
Yeah, Mr. Mohan is also appearing in the Ancient Aliens.
Yep.
In a few occasions, as far as I know.
I knew I'd seen his face.
But he's got absolutely astounding stuff, especially about India, because he's a native. He lives there, and he goes to all those remote places you usually wouldn't hear about, where no tourist guide would ever take you, and shows you all the stuff you aren't meant to see, so to speak.
I know exactly what you mean. All the stuff that we want to see, Max. That's what this guy's on. Now, what's the name?
I just wonder what it would be like to take a trip through India with Mr. Mohan.
Oh, dude, it'd be like Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. That's what it would be like. It really would. It'd be like an adventure, man. It really is. But I tell you, I love all this ancient stuff. It constantly shocks me in a good way. Because we tend to think after the schooling we've had wherever we grew up that the ancient world was people that didn't have any idea about the wheel and they were rubbing sticks together and they were just looking up at the sky wondering what the lights were. Poppycock. I tell you, we think we're advanced. Well, I think we're just starting to remember stuff that we forgot many, many times over in the past. Go think about that.
I just dropped you 2 still pictures from that video clip.
Is it in Discord or is it in Skype?
It's in Skype. I've dropped it in Skype because you told me to drop the YouTube link in Skype.
They haven't come through here yet. So they'll probably still be loading on your end of Skype. But when they come,
I mean, it's not so perfect to like when you see it in the video clip.
Right, I need to go back. I need to go back to the network now, Max. Hang on, stand by. 2 seconds. Here we go, folks. 3, 2. There we go. We are back. We are live with hour number 2 of today's Ancient Mysteries. Yes, with Max, aka Black Templar. He's coming to us from a secret location on continental Europe. It makes it sound really interesting. You know, we're on YouTube as well, and I know people have a tendency to really sensationalize things. So yeah, I have got a super secret Morocco mole type insider who's from a secret location in Central Europe in a bunker. And I can't tell you his real identity because if I did that, then the intelligence agencies would be after me. I can't even do it with a straight face, Max. I can't.
They would find my secret Bavarian beer cellar.
That's what I see. We can't have Max's beer cellar getting found. But Max, thank you for joining me again today. And you know, all joking aside now, because this is some really great information you've put together. There's a time and a place for a laugh and a joke. Even I know that. And we talked about CERN just before the break.
Yeah,
and it was Shiva.
I've just given you 2 pictures.
Can you send them on Discord this time? Yeah.
Of course, I drop them in Discord.
Skype, for some reason, is not playing ball.
Doesn't like you?
Nah.
Okay.
It's maybe something to do with all the talk of Bill Gates recently on the show. You know, maybe that has something to do with it. Okay, I've got the first one there. Let me bring that up now.
Okay. So
I know that picture well. Bang.
It's inside a giant temple.
Okay, let me pull this up here for the audience, and I'll post it in the TFR chat room as well.
For those who have never ever heard about Jainism, Jainism is also one of the bigger religious currents or cults present in India. And the pictures you're about to see, that first picture that shows the inside of the dome of one of those giant temples. It's a very small one. The temple also has got some very interesting murals showing what is believed to be disc aircraft blueprints. And the interesting thing is when you compare that makeup of the dome's inside with what CERN looks like from the inside.
Yeah. Again, it's not.
And I mean, the temple was built at the place where, as far as I know, one of the founders or the founder of the Jain religion arrived on Earth. And it is said that he was brought down to Earth with a sort of flying vehicle together with the crew.
Yeah.
Or did they pick him up for a few years, brought him back, and then he became the founder of the Jain religion, and the temple basically commemorates that event.
Yeah, like, are you hinting at the fact that maybe they opened a portal and brought them through?
Yeah, at least it's quite strange that you have a temple that shows murals and paintings that resemble technological blueprints, and then you look into the center of the dome, And it looks exactly like CERN looks from the inside.
I'm not shocked. You know why I'm not shocked? Because myself and Anthony Patch, and I credit Anthony for putting this together, we're pretty convinced that what they're doing at CERN is nothing new. And in fact, they were trying to do this, and maybe were doing it back in the times we're looking at today, and maybe other cycles as well. You see, we're not creating anything new. We're merely remembering stuff that we've used in the past.
So,
wow, dude.
What's maybe even more interesting, because it will also tie right in with Shiva. What are the typical entities we've got in Hindu and Tibetan religions? And maybe also, do we have counterparts in Oriental, Western, and Nordic culture? So, would be great if you could bring up that intro PDF.
Yep.
Because I've got some pictures attached, and also, if need be, some further links.
Yeah, I've got the pictures here. I can share screens with you on Skype as well, Max, so you can see what I've got here. Share screen. There you go. Okay, and I can send this to the TFR chat room as well. I'll send images in there. But yeah, I've got this PDF open now, and we're looking at your first picture here. It looks like Shiva doing a dance, right?
That first picture is actually Tibetan.
Ah, right then.
That's a Tibetan entity. If you go to that tibettravel.org link, that's also, I guess you'll find the same picture there. It's one of the main deities, just can't get the name right now. However, as far as those deities go, we do have, of course, a universal power or God that all beings are subject to. Even what the Hindus themselves call devas or gods, I mean, our word for God, deity, comes from deva. In Latin, it would be deus, D-E-U-S. In English, it's deity, and in Sanskrit, it's deva. So it all comes from that Sanskrit term, for example. And they have the idea already that there is a universal power behind everything, even that what we regard maybe as gods or divine beings, that everyone is subject to, and that is so complex and so abstract we can't understand it, and even the gods can't understand it.
Yeah, you know, this is weird. This is weird, and it connects, and people are going to think, how the hell does this connect? I was watching a presentation about black holes, okay? It was on about information and energy and stuff like that. And it was somebody called Leonard Susskind. And what he said was, there's certain laws in our universe. And listen, doesn't matter who made them. Doesn't matter how they came into existence. They're just laws, okay? They are what they are. Don't question them. They're just part of the game. And it makes me think of what you're saying here. I mean, everything that's here, these laws are in place. Whoever put them there, we're all governed by them. We all have to kind of play by them and just get on with it. The laws are the laws. I don't know, it's weird because the talk that you're saying and the black hole talk and with other information that I've got going on in the background, Max, I can't share. This is all tying together very, very nicely indeed.
So then, of course, in Hindu mythology, you have the devas. That's the good guys. Even though the good guys sometimes do evil things, if you look at it from an objective point of view. They also wage wars, they kill, and so on.
Now, Max, is this the Nagas, the Nagas? Is that what you're talking about?
The Nagas? No, I'm talking about the devas. Okay. Nagas will be up later on.
Okay.
So these are basically the good guys. That are usually those that you will see teaching humanity. They will also give weapons and technology to humanity in the Vedic texts, and so on, so that their favored human rulers can lead their wars in a successful way, and so on. So morality in those Hindu texts, it can't be compared to that black and white. It's more or less that universal dharmic law. Like, as long as you don't sin against the laws of the universe, what you do is okay.
Yeah.
which means perhaps in some cases also doing things that our human morale would clearly call evil or negative. What's important, a lot of those devas are enemies of the asuras, which are the evil guys, so to say, also demigods or gods like the devas, but in an evil way. They always have a lust for power. They also have a very soft spot to give into all kinds of vices and so on. However, those asuras were not evil from the start. There's quite a long time where there was no distinction between Deva and Asura. They called all those divine beings Asura, or celestial beings. And now things get interesting, because if you look to ancient Sumeria and Zoroastrianism and all those really old religions, what is their highest god, or what do they call their highest gods? Ahura Mazda, which means about as much as great Asura. Ahura is just basically the Sumerian version of Asura. It comes from the same word.
Got you.
Now you look at the Nordic gods, look at Odin, Thor, and so on. They are known as the Aesir, Aesir, or in German as the Asen. And if you compare that to Asura, Aesir, Asura, that's the same root. That word has its roots in Asura.
So they're all talking about the same thing.
They are talking about the same thing, exactly. They are talking about the same entities.
Wow, man. You see, it does all connect together then. I'm waiting for you because I don't want to put you off course. I've had enough people.
No problem.
I've had people complaining that.
If you then have a look at the rest of our mythology, with those asuras and devas, the first name ever used for the Jewish and the Christian was not Yahweh or Jehovah. It was Elohim, and Elohim is a plural. It's a plural word. It means those of great power. And that's basically synonymous with Anunnaki, the sons of Anu, or those who came from the sky.
Yeah.
And that, if you ask me, that equates to Asura.
Yeah, there's one and the same. They're all the same.
All those ancient texts talk about the same.
Yeah.
Even though the depictions may change and the looks, but basically what they do remains the same.
Now, I want people to think about that. Just think about it for a moment. You've either got all of these people separated by time and geography that have come up with entities, totally original entities to them, they think. They're separated by time and geography. And they all have a word for these same entities that they all dreamt up and imagined. And the word that they imagined for these imaginary entities happens to be the same. Pretty similar across cultures and time. Now, is that more likely, or is it probably, truer to say that they were all talking about the same dang thing? Maybe at different periods of time, maybe in different countries, but there's a commonality here, Max. There's a common thread to all of it.
That's a massive commonality. And I think that people all over the world were at the same time aware of them.
Yeah.
Because if you look at how, we will do that perhaps in a later show in more detail, but if you look at how the flying craft are described, in the Vedic texts, they have the smaller craft, which you also have described, for example, in Southern America by the natives, when they talk about the gods coming in their giant mechanical eagles and all that stuff.
Yep.
Or on their fiery barges. If you look to the Northern American natives, and if you look to the Inuit, for example, they do have the same stories. the gods came down from heaven in fiery eggs. Next thing, you look at the Nordic stuff. What do we hear? The gods reside somewhere on different planes, maybe also in space or orbit, in their halls. And it's quite a common thing in the Vedic myth that the gods do have large assembly halls that also sometimes are described as landing on Earth. And then in those landed assembly halls, they would meet with humans, with kings, with sages, with philosophers, and so on.
Do you know what that sounds like to me? Bear with me here and just go with me, right? A big hall where the people come down, right? Okay, these things come down and we have these big meetings and everything, okay? Cool. We're at a time now when literally we can create a virtual hall with a big floor, a big playing area where we could one day very soon all meet in a virtual realm. It sounds like it's almost some kind, it could be some holographic projection that came down as well.
Up to a point, it also seems that those beings had that means of telecommunications.
And I'm thinking, Max, if everything we've got today, let's just assume that they had it and maybe something better. So yeah.
I mean, everyone has for sure heard the word mantra.
Yeah.
At one point or another in his life. Usually you think about Om Bahut Mehum and so on, what they do during meditation. That's one version of mantra. Creating a certain vibration with your vocal cord. Because as most of you will know, vibrations and frequencies definitely do have an impact on our bodies.
Absolutely.
And if you read those Vedic texts, in many cases, when they operate high-tech, be it one of those Astra weapons given by the gods, or if they call down a god to their aid or for conversations, diplomacy or so, it's usually that those people who can do that, they have been given a special mantra by which to call that god if they perform it. It sounds to me almost like it's not a mantra, but rather as if they had given the phone number.
It's almost like that. Yeah, it's like they've been given like you say, that's a perfect way of describing it. The correct frequency, the right phone number, whatever it is, whatever they're tuned to.
I can't say if it's by technical means that mantra meant perhaps also some kind of a transponder or whatever, or if it really just meant a form of telepathic communication or whatever. But it sounds to me a lot like an interaction.
Yeah, it's almost
more
like
on the telecommunication line of things.
It's like the electronic handshake that's given between machines that we don't really see and are aware of. It's as if these mantras, you get the right one, you're going to get the right handshake from the thing you're trying to contact, right?
Yeah, also those weapons to bring them into existence and to fire them and so on, you have to know the correct mantra, and usually it's described as depending on how powerful the weapon is and so on, and how advanced. You have to be especially concentrated, and
you're talking about lasers.
Not just lasers.
You could have the frequency of a laser, the wavelength, the frequency used, the concentration of the beam as well. You see, it's scientific language that does tie in with the weaponry that you're hinting at.
So, the other thing that we always have is those battling factions. And if I already was talking about it, if you have a look at the Sumerians as well as the Arkans from the Nag Hammadi and all that stuff, you always have one faction that wants humankind as close to divinity as possible, as far as abilities go, as far as the bodies go, and so on. And then you have the other faction that doesn't want all of this. They want people basically to remain a sort of simple worker.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what you find in the Sumerian texts when Enlil, who is basically the one who votes for humans are our working slaves, when he starts to get into an open conflict with his younger brother Enki, who wants humans to become more aware of themselves and more like their creators.
Yeah, I've always looked at those two as being like a couple of really boffin scientists. Their laboratory, their experiments taking place right here on Earth, you know?
And to complicate, so to say, that small demonology even more, the Vedic texts talk about Rakshasa. These are a form of intelligent giant humanoid monsters. They usually have terrifying fangs. They are usually quite big, about 3 to 5 meters or so. And they are usually described as dwelling in forests and villages or smaller towns. Some of them feed on human flesh and also actively hunt men as prey. And they are able to perform magic, especially during night times. That's when the powers are at large. Very often they are especially capable of creating illusions.
Wow.
For example, like one Rakshasa creating the illusion of being 10 Rakshasas. Or also changing their size. Like from big to small and so on, and shape-shifting. Of course, that's what all those entities can do. They basically all can do shape-shift. They can change their size. They can perform illusions, and of course, they've got superhuman strength. Usually, when you read about battles with Rakshasas and the sons of King Pandu, those Rakshasas rip out whole trees to use as clubs and so on.
Wow.
And in some cases during the Mahabharata, because it's filled with war, that epic, and it basically also culminates in the big Mahabharata war, which takes place over a period of 18 days. Those 18 days, if you want to know how many soldiers or people died in those 18 days according to the Mahabharata, you got to sum up the numbers according to the military terms given in the text, because it's quite detailed about how many companies and so on, military units were in field at which battles and how many were slain and so on. And you end up with about 1.8 billion people dead in 18 days.
Damn.
So we're talking about something that might have been even a kind of global conflict, and that Mahabharata is filled with all those advanced weaponry being used and so on. It sounds to me like a big scale war with advanced weapons.
Yeah, you're probably talking scalar weapons. Probably, yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Yep, directed energy.
Very probable. I guess a lot of what's described in the Mahabharata are weapon systems not even yet known again to us.
Yeah, this is what I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think, what's out there that's been theorized, been speculated upon. Maybe we do have this, maybe we can do that. And I'm thinking we have to think at some point in the past, then, another cycle, that they probably had all the things that we can dream up right now. All of these future weapons, all of the things that we think were the first ones, were the smartest kiddies in the whole of the universe, coming up with such elaborate ways of killing one another. How depressing to find out that this isn't the first time we've done this. I tell you, dude, there's something about this planet, there's something about the reason we're here, the way we're made up, that keeps us in this war cycle. It's insane.
Yeah, that's basically quite likely simply the vibration of the Kali Yuga if you come from a Hindu perspective, because the Kali Yuga is the age where everything is about materialism.
Yeah, because we go from no materialism and pure energy all the way to pure materialism and no idea about the energetic stuff all around us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's basically the cycle.
Yeah. I know what end of the cycle we're at. And we're almost on another break. Now, I tell you, it's always the mark of a good show when even I I'm lost for words at how quickly things are moving here. You're listening to Max, and he's coming to us from a secret location in Europe. And what I'm going to do is, Max has put a lot of notes together here. We've barely even got through the introduction one. But what I'll do, if Max agrees, is I will put the information Max put together in the kind of introduction PDF. I can attach that to the actual archive of this over at TFR, and I'll put a link here on YouTube.
I'm okay
and things.
with that.
Yeah, and I've got a website, kevbakershow.com. I've not been using it for a while. I need to get back into using it. And I think, Max, this gives me the perfect kind of impetus, the push that I need, the kick up the bum I need to get back doing more articles, more background information to support everything else we do on the show. Nano Girl, she had so much put together just recently. I could probably go and put that together for her, and I'll do the same for you, because I think it's important that people who are looking at this type of information, they can check this out, because I've been listening to this type of woo for years, and usually you'll get the Mahabharata, a standalone kind of episode by somebody. Somebody will get into the Vermanas, totally a separate show altogether. But it's putting it all together and trying to connect them all like Max is doing. It's no easy job, folks. I'm going to try as hard as I can to help make the most of the information that he's putting together for all of you out there. And you can take it, you can leave it. I've been very impressed with Max, and I'll be back after the break. Don't go anywhere. Yeah, there we go. That music has finished. But Max, no, I can put what you've put in the PDF one, just as kind of pointers for people to go and do their own research and things.
Of course,
yeah.
That's what it's intended for.
Exactly.
Because I already had promised that I'd put that information together in some kind of presentation PDF file so people could have it and look at it for themselves, look at the links, start their own research, because I'm also just human and it's just my subjective view of things. And in many cases, you only see the connections if you, so to speak, discover them for yourself.
Yep. 2 seconds. Yeah, sorry about that. But yeah, we've got one more segment to go with Max.
Yeah, maybe we'll manage to jump into that into the stances of John.
Yeah, that sounds
maybe
good to me.
I'll do only a very quick introduction to theosophy and so on, because all that stuff is in all length in the PDF files.
So is this you jumping over to PDF 2 now, or are we still on 1?
Yeah, I would then jump over to PDF 2, because
okay, this is where it's going to get really interesting.
The most important parts of the first one have been told, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. Look, I mean, I've been following along with it, but I'm looking at, and just to give the audience a little taste before we go live with the final section of the show here today, we're now getting into Blavatsky and the Theosophical Society. I managed to get that word right.
That's also one of those things you usually are not meant to babble.
Yeah, exactly. I've noticed this before. I've had guests on in the past talked about this kind of thing. Some of those shows got interesting, i.e. trying to get them uploaded and things like that. But that's okay. That's okay, because there's a reason. There's a reason, Max, that this stuff is occulted from the public.
Yeah, and the main reason in my eyes is to keep people away from knowing.
Yeah.
From asking dumb questions.
And once we remember who we are, once we gain a perspective and understanding of the cycles and what we're all about, not why we're here, but who we actually are and what this is all about, that's the kind of information that they've kept hidden for centuries and ages and eons for a reason.
Yeah, and especially when it comes to theosophy, or for example also the works of the Armanian order, That's a pagan group that was active in Germany somewhere around 1900 to, as far as I know, until today. But until today, only very, very secretive and calm.
Right, we're
the
getting
big
ready.
problem is that's
On you go. On you go.
yeah. Big problem is the Armanian Orden, as well as the stuff that came from Theosophy, was at least in part abused by the Nazi Party. And this, of course, gave them the best reason ever they had to condemn all that stuff to hell. Until today. It's quite simple.
Yep. Here we go. Now we're getting ready to go back to the network. We've got one segment to go. I can't believe it's gone so quickly. But here we go, folks. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Final segment of today's Kev Baker Show right here on your #1 network, Truth Frequency Radio, tfrlive.com. We've got Max, Black Templar, a.k.a. Max. Yeah, I totally butchered that one, but Max, I'm going to give it back to you. We've only got one segment to go. Now we're going to be moving into things like the secret doctrine and theosophy. Yes.
Basically, what we were talking during the last three segments was just maybe we could call it a little kind of prelude, introduction, warming up for the real woo. Because I don't know how many of you have ever heard about theosophy. Theosophy is the idea that there once must have been one global science, which basically later on, through a series of catastrophic events, through basically errors in tradition and passing the information on, has become all the different religions of the world. And that in all religions of the world and all ancient cultures, up until today, we will find traces of that primordial first science. And of course, those theosophists, as they call themselves, they started to look for evidence. That's basically where such stuff comes from, like the connection between Asura, Ahura, and Aesir. For example, that's basically theosophy at work.
I've got you.
If you find those connections and try to get to the big central truth that lies beneath all different religions, all different cultures.
And there's there's a character that's central to this anyway, in my thinking. I've always heard of Theosophical Society.
That's Helena Petrovna Blavatsky.
Yeah, she's always the one that gets kind of thrown in with this.
Yeah, of course. I mean, she was a self-proclaimed medium, and I've got to give her critics at least that medial work she's done, that was quite likely fraudulent. But the big but, she was in India, and after her time in India, she also claimed to have been in Tibet at that time. I mean, we were talking about around about 1875. So in 1875, India and Tibet were basically closed off to the world. It's not like today where you could visit all those temples and go everywhere. I mean, India was a colony. Tibet at the time was a kingdom, very secluded. And when she came back, she wrote her book, The Secret Doctrine, where she claimed that she had been given secret Tibetan and also Hindu texts by secret masters who explained those texts to her, and that these texts would contain basically the oldest knowledge of humanity, on the oldest scientific knowledge about how man came into existence and how the whole universe came into existence. Of course, she got a lot of criticism. I mean, a woman at that time going to such exotic and wild countries like India and Tibet, and there being introduced to occult knowledge by secret masters and so on, and she couldn't show any original texts stuff. They said, okay, she's dreamt it up in her crooked mind. Until today, except for the stanzas of John, all the texts she referred to in her books are known to the scientific community. She just really got access to that stuff before anybody else did. So
that's kind of something we see in history, though. You know, I think to somebody like George Orwell, Eric Blair, you know, somebody
and
who
these
wrote 1980.
stanzas,
Yeah, he wrote 1984, but he was in possession of part of the plan where the world was going. He was rubbing shoulders with like the think tanks and secret societies, and he had an idea where we were going, and that's why 1984. Some people say it's prophetic. Well, he had early access to some of the information, shall we say? So yeah, this is really interesting, Max.
Yeah, I mean, and later on, after World War II, theosophy was declared a racist form of esoterics and so on, just because people were translating the text wrong. That's also the reason why the bad guys in Germany liked theosophy so much, at least some of them who were into the occult knowledge, because when Blavatsky talks about the creation of man, she talks about 6 basic root races, and from these 6 basic root races, where all other human races come from, she says sub-races branched off and continue to branch off even today. And when the Germans translated that English text, and there was just one translation done and published in Germany, they translated sub with the German word unter. And unter in German can mean sub, of course, like subcategory and so on.
Yep.
But it can also mean inferior.
Ah.
So at that moment, when she was talking about Unterrassen, which means inferior races, of course, the Nazis said, oh yes, she's our girl.
Yep, they seized upon it. Yeah, we can use
it was
that.
just that
Yep.
translation error, basically. She wasn't talking about any hierarchy. She was just talking about the very initially 6 root races. And from this basic 6 human races, all other human races branched forth. Therefore sub-races, but nothing about inferiority or so. That's a misinterpretation of Blavatsky's work. But that's upheld until today to keep people from looking into it.
Yeah.
So what I'm giving you now is the text of the stanzas of John. That's that secret text she was shown. And it's the first half of it. And that's the creation of the universe. And I just simply read it out to you. The eternal parent, wrapped in her invisible robes, had slumbered once again for 7 eternities. Time was not, for it lay asleep in the infinite bosom of duration. Universal mind was not, for there were no ahi to contain it. The 7 ways to bliss were not. The great causes of misery were not, for there was no one to produce and get ensnared by them. Darkness alone filled the boundless all. For father, mother, and son were once more one, and the son had not awakened yet for the new wheel, and his pilgrimage thereon. The 7 sublime lords and the 7 truths had ceased to be, and the universe, the son of necessity, was immersed in paranishpana, to be out-breathed by that which is and yet is not, naught was. The cause of existence had been done away with. The visible that was, and the invisible that is, rested in eternal non-being, the one being. Alone the one form of existence stretched boundless, infinite, causeless, and dreamless sleep, and life pulsated unconscious in universal space, throughout that all-presence which is sensed by the opened eye of the Dhamma. But where was the Dhamma when the alaya of the universe was in Paramartha, and the great wheel was Anumpadaka? So, just to get to terms with a few of those special words, the eternal parent means parent space, according to Blavatsky, and the ahi is not known in any language. according to Blavatsky, it is a Sansar word, and Sansar is a language that's even older than Sanskrit, that predates all of humanity, or at least what is known to us of humanity, and was basically the oldest scientific language ever. And Ahi means about as much, according to her, as the wise serpents or dragons of wisdom. They are basically like the highest gods or divine beings that can appear on the scale of manifestation to become an expression of that universal mind.
These reptilians, they always come back into it.
Yeah,
Always.
they're always there.
Yeah.
They may also be related to that race of natural spirits called Nagas, which are also reptilian.
Yep.
So it's quite complex.
Very.
And a Dangma, to behold all that, would be a purified soul. So a person of the highest possible enlightenment that can be reached. So father, mother, and son, male, female principles, opposing poles, and so on.
Yep.
Darkness is father, mother, and light their son, says an old Eastern proverb. She explains further. And Blavatsky says, according to those texts, darkness and light are the same. Basically, light is just another form of darkness.
Yeah, and you can't
With the
have
shadow of
darkness.
darkness.
Yeah, exactly. One needs the other.
That already sounds a lot like black matter.
Yep. Yep.
Paranishpana, that word means the absolute perfection, that complete oneness. And if you compare that to the Bible, in the Bible we only get, in the beginning there was only darkness. The Nordic Edda says, in the beginning everything was empty. There was just the gaping abyss of Ginnungagap. Before there was soil or sky or any green thing, there was only the gaping abyss of Ginnungagap. This chaos of perfect silence and darkness lay between the homeland of elemental fire, Muspelheim, and the homeland of elemental ice, Niflheim. And these come into play later on again, also in those stanzas. Now, second stanza, where were the builders, the luminous sons of Manvateric dawn, in the unknown darkness in their Ahi Paranishpana, the producers of form from no form, the root of the world, the Deva Matri and Svapavat, rested in the bliss of non-being.
That sounds like something out of Masonic kind of literature. Where are the builders, the luminous sons, you know?
Yeah, according to the stanzas of Jan, which were given to the scribes by the luminous sons, according to the lore.
Wow.
So basically, creation of the universe is told by ETs or so, perhaps.
It sounds like that to me, dude. But again, you know.
Yeah, where was silence? Where are the ears to sense it? No, there was neither silence nor sound, naught save ceaseless eternal breath, which knows itself not. The hour had not yet struck. The ray had not yet fleshed into the germ. The Matri Padma had not yet swollen. Her heart had not yet opened for the one ray to enter, thence to fall as 3 into 4 into the lap of Maya. The 7 sons were not yet born from the web of light. Darkness alone was father, mother, Svapavat, and Svapavat was in darkness. These two are the germ, and the germ is one. The universe was still concealed in the divine thought and the divine bosom. So to get on with a few of those words, Deva Matri means the mother of the gods. So from where all gods come from, the primal substance, or basically what everything is created out of.
Yeah.
Then Svapavat means, again, that self-existing, uncreated substance which everything comes from. And Matri Padma is like the eternal egg or world egg. And the luminous suns, as Blavatsky interprets it, is the planetary spirits that fashioned the cosmos and the planets, so to say, as creators. And Manvatara is literally meaning the duration of a Manu, which is a period or age of existence. And each of those Manus is reigned over by one Manu. which is also a sort of avatar or whatever.
Yeah.
So it can. So we have the total void before creation, basically, in those two stanzas. Now it gets interesting. The last vibration of the seventh eternity thrills through infinitude. The mother swells, expanding from within, without, like the bud of the lotus. The vibration sweeps along, touching with its swift wing the whole universe and the germ that dwelleth in darkness. The darkness that breatheth over the slumbering waters of life. Darkness radiates light, and light drops one solitary ray into the mother deep. The ray shoots through the virgin egg. The ray causes the eternal egg to thrill and drop the non-eternal germ, which condenses into the world egg. Then the three fall into the four. The radiant essence becomes seven inside, seven outside. The luminous egg, which in itself is three, curdles and spreads in milk-white curds throughout the depths of mother, the root that grows in the depths of the ocean of life. The root remains, the light remains, the curds remain. And still, however that is pronounced,
Oehu. Oehu flew. No,
yeah,
it's Oehu.
is one. The root of life was in every drop of the ocean of immortality, and the ocean was radiant light, which was fire and heat and motion. Darkness vanished and was no more. It disappeared in its own essence, the body of fire and water, of father and mother. Behold Olanu, the radiant child of the two, the unparalleled refulgent glory, bright space son of dark space, which emerges from the depths of the great dark waters. It is Oeahu the younger. This is not given in the text, as it seems. He shines forth as the sun. He is the blazing divine dragon of wisdom. The one is four, and four takes to itself three, and the union produces the Sapta, in whom are the seven which become the Tridasa, or the host and the multitudes. Behold him lifting the veil and unfurling it from east to west. He shuts out the above and leaves the below to be seen as the great illusion. He marks the places for the shining ones and turns the upper into a shoreless sea of fire, and the one manifested into the great waters. Where was the germ, and where was now darkness? Where is the spirit of the flame that burns in thy lamp, Olanu? The germ is that, and that is light, the white brilliant sun of the dark hidden father. Light is called flame, and flame is fire, and fire produces heat, which yields water, the water of life in the great mother. Father, mother spin a web, whose upper end is fastened to spirit, the light of one darkness, and the lower one to its shadow end, matter. And this web is the universe spun out of the two substances made in one, which is Svabhavat. It expands when the breath of fire is upon it. It contracts when the breath of the mother touches it. Then the suns dissociate and scatter, to return into their mother's bosom at the end of the great day, and re-become one with her. When it is cooling, it becomes radiant, and the suns expand and contract through their own selves and hearts. They embrace infinitude. Then Svabhavat sends Fohat to harden the atoms. Each is a part of the web. Reflecting the self-existent Lord like a mirror, each becomes in turn a world. So in that Oeahu is translated as the rootless root of all.
You know, that there
So
when it
again-
says harden the atoms, each is part of the web, reflecting the self-existent Lord, like a mirror. Each becomes in turn a world. It's like as above, so below, you know?
Yeah, and it sounds a lot like the Big Bang.
Yeah.
Or at least a part of the Big Bang to me, because if we would know the exact translations for Svabhavat, for example, or all those other special terms, if we could relate them to what we know from quantum physics or our normal physics alone, I'm quite sure this would read in the end like some sort of an formula.
Yeah, because, I mean, if we think, I know people sometimes say, well, it's not the Big Bang, but if we think of that, I mean, go to the instant, the second, even though there was no time, because remember, time and space are tied. We're having a description here of that state, that potential, that energy, that what it was before it became our physical universe that we know and live in today.
I mean that web of father, mother that is woven, and that basically connects everything. that's known in all religions. The Hindus call it the web of Indra. The Nordic religions call it the web of Vyrd. And our scientists today call it the morphogenetic field, or maybe up to a certain point quantum space.
Yep.
Mm.
You see,
And
I mean, we're only getting back into the likes of quantum fields and things like that. Again, hinting at the fact that we're only rediscovering things that people were writing down in texts thousands of years ago.
And that Fohat, as Blavatsky explains it, is basically the animating principle electrifying every atom into life. So basically, that's the connection point between energy and manifestation, that Fohat, and that's seen as that kind of breath of life, the divine breath of life that permeates everything. Without Fohat, there would be no matter, there would be no life. It permeates everything and creates everything.
Yeah, I've talked to Joe about this before, energy to matter conversion. You know, once you've knocked that off, you know, you pretty much, you've hacked the game. You know, when you can change energy into any type of matter you want. And I know that sounds a bit out there, folks, but, you know, we're talking about alchemists, and this is how it all ties back into the ancient world as well. Max,
Yeah,
I mean, we've got about 5 minutes.
When we look at the Bible, what was the first thing besides God?
The word.
The word.
Yeah.
The first vibration.
Yep.
What is that text talking about? It talks about the first vibration.
For me,
but
yeah.
in way more detail.
Yeah, that whole Genesis thing. There's definitely science encoded into that. Absolutely.
If we look to the Edda, what happens in the Edda parallel to those stanzas, frost from Niflheim and billowing flames from Muspelheim, so fire and ice crept towards each other until they met in Ginnungagap, in that emptiness. Amid the hissing and sputtering, the fire melted the ice, and the drops formed themselves into Ymir, the Screamer, which was a frost giant. So that is this version of the first vibration.
Again, yeah, it's various versions of this first.
And Ymir was, according to the Edda, a hermaphrodite, and would start to reproduce while sleeping, because as soon as he slept and sweated from the fire, his sweat drops would become new giants.
So basically, like a virus shedding clones of itself.
Yeah, I mean, is that panspermia or whatever? I don't know what they try to describe there.
That's
I mean,
weird.
Later on in the stanzas about the creation of mankind, we also hear about a race of the sweat-born, which also are a kind of a sexually reproducing, kind of like not yet completely human, but humanoid being.
Yeah.
Which is at some point in time, according to those stanzas of Chan, has existed on Earth before nature split up into male and female.
Now, again, though, and you look at things like the depiction of Baphomet. I mean, that's a hermaphroditic goat.
Baphomet is basically the union of contradictions.
Yeah, you've got this
union of opposites. And what's even more important, that's also something we'll have to talk about sooner or later. Baphomet, that name, Baphomet, is quite likely the wrong pronunciation that the Crusaders brought home from the Holy Land, and maybe also the Knights Templar, when they heard about Baphomet. Baphomet, that's Sumerian, and that is known as the gate to the light, or the Stargate. And that Baphomet is closely related, again, also something I'll sooner or later will talk about in the show, because it ties right in with all the stuff we're looking at right now. That ties right in with the Black Sun and all the related stuff from Sumeria and India and Egypt and so on. And that also then strongly ties into those special 15 years of German history.
Holy heck, dude. You wait till, like, You've done it. You must have timed this. You must have meant that. You wait
I,
until we're right near the
I
end.
can. I mean, usually when you talk about the Black Sun, people will tell you it's a symbol the Nazis made up, and it's completely fictional. And I say no, it's completely the other way around. They didn't find anything new.
Yeah, because I was
They
always led
just
to
stuck
believe.
in the old stuff that they, at least to my understanding, didn't really fully grasp, and just took those morsels that looked useful to them or fit their ideology, and yeah, we all know what happened.
Confirmation bias again. You know, look at that. That fits what we're trying to push here, and then ignore anything else that doesn't quite fit. But dude, you've taken us right to the end of the show, and then you hit me with Bap Homet. And Bap Homet, going back to Sumeria, and I can certainly see how that could be mispronounced and it could be lost in
It
translation.
turns into Baphomet. Baphomet.
But you're tying it to a Stargate?
Yeah, because Baphomet in Sumerian language means about as much as gate to the stars or gate of light.
Dude, Max, I love you. I really do love you, man. Your brain.
I mean,
this information, we're almost at the end of the
last
show,
5
dude.
minutes, what's interesting with those Sumerian stuff, and I can also show you once I've got it all collected together, there's a depiction from ancient Sumer. And it shows Sumerian king. I don't know if it is Sargon of Akkad or whoever it's supposed to be. And he's shown in front of a mountain, the Midnight Mountain, and above that mountain, that black sun is shining together with the normal sun. So there's two suns depicted. And that Midnight Mountain, midnight means north. So as we are already have seen, that there must be some scientific stuff.
We're out of time. We're out of time.
No problem.
I'll be back tomorrow, folks. Don't go anywhere. Wherever you are, make it TFR, and it got cut off. But no, we're still here. Listen, I would like you to finish what you were saying there, Max, because I don't want to.
Just a short.
Yeah.
There's a strong connection between the Black Sun, the central sun that the stanzas of Jan and Blavatsky in some parts talks about. I can also show you what perhaps may be that central sun, because as we know, we have a black hole at the center of our Milky Way galaxy. And there's, of course, since forever, I guess, people were talking about the possibility of burnt out suns or any kind of planet or stuff being in our orbit or somewhere around us in the galaxy, which we haven't found yet, because it's by one way or another evading our radar and our telescopes or whatever. However, there's a strong connection to the North Pole, and I mean the magnetic north, Antarctica. And that's basically where all that stuff in the end comes from, like hollow earth theories and all that stuff. If you're asking me, the Buddhists know about the Mount Meru device. That's also, again, the Mount Meru, from which the ladder or bridge to the gods leads. And then you have that black sun that shines from the midnight, so the North Pole Mountain, Antarctica, magnetic north. Maybe that's tied together, but we'll have to look at that in a known segment, I guess.
You know, definitely, and we're looking at this Mount Mera thing here, and I've got a diagram up of it. I mean, to me, when I'm looking at this, and again, this is just me, right? I've only just looked at this, but I'm starting to get a feeling that what they're talking about there was the same thing that they were talking about with the Tower of Babel.
Yeah, and then you have that stories of the Rainbow Bridge, that bridge of light leading to Asgard. That's the Norse version.
Yep.
So you always then you have Baphomet that is basically also the bridge or gate of light. And we learn it's placed somewhere at the Midnight Mountain. Midnight is an old symbol for north. And in that case, I guess magnetic north, because it's got to do with energies.
Yep.
That's why everyone's so mad about Antarctica.
That's why everyone's trying to get there, right?
Yeah, that's why there's been that Neuschwabenland expedition, for example, in the 30s.
Dude, Max, you have left us so much to think on, and I want to get you back on again really soon so we can do a follow-up on this. You can,
Yeah, sure, of course. we still have a part from the stanzas,
Yep.
from the cosmology, and I've also got some stuff to show you that this knowledge is not just mythological, but that there is evidence for hard science behind it from ancient times.
You see, we're on to something here, folks, and it's been a total shift in pace and subjects, and for new people who might have only come across the channel with the corona coverage, this is how we roll on here. Normally we go into all sorts of subjects. Usually we find that they somehow connect together. And I just want to throw that out there because I know we have had a lot of new people tuning in to watch the shows for corona coverage, but I would like to think that you'll be here for a lot more as well. You've seen what Max has had to offer tonight, the Ancient Woo. We've got a whole list of guests that come on regularly. We've got new guests that are lining up. We cover everything. We talk about as much as we can, and we're very honest about the fact that there's many topics that we haven't got time to get to. Doesn't mean we're ignoring them or I'm ignoring them. I just invite you on a fly on the wall kind of experience along with me on my awakening. I bring to you the stuff that I find. It might be interesting, it might be useless, but it's as real as we can make it. I'm never going to have any kind of secret sources that are going to break stories that nobody else has got, and they're only coming to my channel on YouTube. As much as I would like to think that kind of thing happens, it really doesn't. And I'm not going to kid you on about it either. I'll be brutally honest. I'll tell you who my sources are. I'll take you to them. They're usually websites. They're usually social media. And then there's a lot of dot connecting, some of which may connect, some of which may not. And a whole pile of speculation and conspiracy woo piled on top of that again. But altogether, we just keep it honest. We keep it real. I don't know much. In fact, I've probably know less about stuff than stuff I do know about. But we're all here learning, right? And Max tonight, he's given me so much to think about. It's information I've heard other bits of shows talking about before, but not quite put together in the way that Max does it. And I hope that will encourage you to come back for more as well. I'll be back with a safe space stream tomorrow, round about between 6 and 8 p.m. in the UK. Keep an eye on the channel. And of course, there'll be Freaky Friday tomorrow night with the guys right here on the YouTube channel, and of course at the home of Freaky Friday, tfrlive.com. So again, a big thank you to Max for everything that he's brought us today. Max, I'll get a quick word with you off air. After, of course, we play my cheeky little outro that saves me stumbling over it all the time. Hang on, Max, so somebody wants to have a word with you. Oh, here we go.
How dare you?
Oh, come on, Greta. It was only Max. She was only connecting ancient dots, Greta. Come on.
How dare you?
So, yes, on that note, folks, we are out of here. Keep it real. And remember, we're all looking for answers. We're all on this journey. None of us know the answers. If we did, we probably wouldn't be hanging about on YouTube channels like the Kev Baker Show in the first place. Enjoy it. As much as there's stressful things to get worried about out there, we are in an amazing period of time right now. All of this science that we're rediscovering. You know, we're not creating it or inventing it. We're rediscovering it. There's a chance that we could be living through the end of one age and the start of another. Now, I don't know how it all plays out, but I sure as hell know I'm glad I've got you lot out there along for the ride. So until next time, keep it real. Remember, tell the person that you love that you do love them. Give them a big, huge hug, because you never know when will be the last time. Until next time, we're out of here. Keep your mind open. Keep looking for the woo, but not to the point where your brain turns to black goo.